It's now time for the Fall Sports Recap Show with Game Day Gilman, Adam Hefty, and Andy Beckstrom. Broadcasting live from the Burnett Dairy Cooperative Studios in Pine City. Now to your host, Ethan Game Day Gilman. And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Fall Sports Recap Show. I'm your host, Ethan Game Day Gilman. I am joined by our other game broadcasters here tonight, Andy Beckstrom, Adam Hefty. First of all, guys, thanks so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Glad to be here and kind of recap what was a pretty exciting fall sports season.
Yeah, it really was. A lot of teams really got better throughout the year, it looked like, and it was really fun. It'll be fun to kind of take a look back at it as well.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun here. We're going to go through some of our awards, if you will, here as we go forward. But first, a quick recap. It was a fun sports season. We had one team that went to state this year. That was Rush City for volleyball. But that was it. We got a couple of teams that were close in football, but no one really was able to get there. We had... Again, Rush City that made it to state for the third year in a row. We'll talk more about them when we go forward. But first, we're going to get a word from our fine sponsors here. Some of our sports sponsors that we have throughout the season. They don't necessarily sponsor this show, but we'll hear the word from them anyway. So back after word from our fine sponsors here on both KBEK and WCMP.
Whoa, they've got what you need at the Pine City Freeway Holiday Station store. Right now, load up on deals like Red Bull 8.4 ounce cans, 3 for $6.50. Frito-Lay varieties, buy one, get one free. Buy a fountain drink and get a Reese's King Size candy bar for $2. And fill your propane tanks for $3.99 a gallon to get ready for hunting and frying that turkey. Open 24/7, 365. They've got what you need at the Freeway Holiday Station store in Pine City.
Are you interested in a technical degree that can quickly help you land your dream career? Or maybe you've always dreamed of going to a four-year college, but you'd like to start close to home. Either way, Pine Technical and Community College has you covered. PTCC offers more than 50 degrees in hot fields like healthcare, information technology, advanced manufacturing, and business. PTCC is now accepting applications. Financial aid may be available. Go online
Arrowhead
to
Ice Fishing and Winter Show, presented by
information.
Eskimo and Ion, returns December 13th through 15th.
Join us for a fantastic family adventure.
The crowd favorite Sea Lion Splash offers multiple thrilling performances each day.
Try your luck at catching a trout in our frozen basin for prizes.
Learn fishing secrets from pros at the Icebox.
Along with cooking demos from Field and Flame.
If there's too much to see,
Come back a second day for free.
come for the deals.
Stay for the fun.
December 13th through 15th at the Deck in Duluth.
ArrowheadIceShow.com.
The mushroom melt is back at A&W. How does this sound? Sautéed seasoned mushrooms and onions with melted Swiss cheese on your choice of a juicy burger or grilled chicken. Then add golden french fries and a medium soft drink. It's the mushroom melt and fries combo at A&W. Now, top it off with a classic A&W root beer float featuring vanilla soft serve and made fresh root beer, all in a frosty mug. Or how about the A&W root beer freeze? Signature combos and delicious treats always at your local A&W restaurant in Pine City.
Embrace Orthodontics offers a unique specialized approach to orthodontic treatment with custom braces or Invisalign. The team at Embrace loves getting to know their patients personally and takes the time to make sure all your questions are answered. Their board-certified orthodontists use only the latest in modern technology to give you the best outcome possible. They work with your insurance company and offer flexible financing options to fit your budget. Call today to set up your free exam and see how Embrace Orthodontics can transform your smile. More online at embracemn.com. That's embracemn.com.
And we're back here on the Fall Sports Recap Show on 106.5 FM, AM 1350, and 95.5 FM, KBEK. Game Day Gilman, joined by both Adam Hefty and Andy Beckstrom. Guys, we're taking a look at some of our volleyball awards now. Just going through the volleyball season, I think first, we're not going to necessarily call out any teams just because, well, we think they were better than the rest. But our first volleyball award, if you will, is kind of the team of the year. Whether it's the team that improved the most, the team that took the biggest jump from last year to this year, or just simply the team that was most dominant. For you guys, team of the year, what is your choice? Adam, we'll start with you.
I think you have to go with Rush City, the team that was really sort of the class of the area when it comes to volleyball. They were really fun to watch. Even when we saw them at the state tournament a few weeks ago, they really went toe-to-toe with some of the best teams in the state.
Yeah, they really did.
I think I'd probably have to agree with the assessment there. They finished 28-5 on the year. I mean, still a tremendous season. You know, you finished the season with only the couple of losses throughout the course of the year. They didn't really play a third set, or a fourth set, I should say, pretty much all season long until they got to the state tournament. You know, it's just one of those teams that when you have that level of dominance and consistent play, it's hard not to give them the nod.
It's really hard not to. I'm going to go from them just because you guys chose them. So I'll take another team that almost got to state, and that's North Branch. We know North Branch, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago now, they made it to state 2 years in a row. They won the state championship their first year there, which was an incredible run. I think we all know Sienna Selbishka. She was a part of that team, now playing at UMD as a graduate student, but in fact, some of the career records she has up there at UMD now. But I'll take North Branch. I think they were a team that definitely overcame some of their weaknesses from last year. Definitely, I think, exceeded expectations a little bit. Not that they didn't have expectations coming into the season, but I think they exceeded those by a long shot. So for me, I'm going to take North Branch. They did fall to Hermantown in the section championship game. I think they just kind of confidence early on was lost. I just don't think they were able to get it back, but I'll take North Branch in that category. Taking a look at, we'll show you some of the teams that we cover there. They are right there. We got 13, 14 of them that we cover, guys. And again, we're not necessarily picking one single school because we like them better or anything like that. We're picking the teams for awards, if you will. The next one on the list is Player of the Year in volleyball. This one's going to be tough because we covered a ton of games, a ton of players who really improved and who really stepped up in maybe a bigger role or even a less role and really did their job. But Adam, we'll go back to you for your volleyball player of the year.
I think this might be a little different from the rest of you, but I'm going to go with Lukenbill from Mora.
Okay.
I thought she did a pretty good job of keeping her team into games, some games that maybe they shouldn't have been in, and she kind of propelled them to be closer in those games and maybe win a few of them.
I think that's a great choice. I had a couple of the senior leaders from Mora on some of my information that I have here too. That they really improved as the season went along, and that senior leadership was absolutely huge for them throughout the year. For me. Yeah, I hate to kind of go back to the well to a certain extent, but I got two players that kind of mostly fit in my mind. That probably McKenna Garr from Rush City. She's a Division I recruit, going to go play for the Gophers. She's going to play a libero position, but she was one of the biggest hitters that they had this year. When Rush City had so much turnover, she stepped right into a kind of more offensive role. She's always been an incredible hitter as far as serving and a little bit of opportunity, but she mostly has played a defensive role just because they've had so many good hitters. But with the graduation, she's had to step into not necessarily out of her comfort zone, but something different than regular season type of action. I'd probably put her and maybe even give a little bit of maybe an honorable mention to Abigail Thielander as well, stepping in that when you have a great team, you have to have a good setter, and that's really the engine that drives the bus, and she was just spot on, taking over in that role.
I like those three picks because those are three great picks. Lukenbill, I think that one maybe, again, is a little bit under the radar there, Adam, because Moore is not a team we talked about a bunch this year. Thankfully, we were able to get out there. They're a team that I think has exceeded expectations, and Lukenbill, I think, was the driving force in that. She really did a good job taking the role she was given and kind of being a leader, too, I think is one of the big things. But, yeah, talking about McKenna Garr, obviously going to the U of M next year. And, yeah, she really took over offensively this year. She had to be more of an attacker this year, look for more kills. And but towards the end of the season, we kind of seen she was able to kind of take a back seat, and your honorable mention was Abby Thielander. She was kind of able to let Abby Thielander kind of take over, and Abby Thielander is a sophomore now. So she kind of let her take over and again, kind of went on the defensive side of things. So I think those are three great picks. Mine, I really couldn't decide, but It was tough. There were a couple players. So now I'm trying to remember who I had. I forgot my list, which seems pretty fair as we try to make this as good as we can. But I think there were a ton of great players as I try to stall to buy some time. But Pine City had some good ones that had to step up into new roles this year. Didn't have the season they would hope, but the roles that they had to take this year, just because I think Pine City as a whole is kind of getting a little bit of turnover. But their volleyball team seen it this year, I think, in a big way, and they were young this year too. So you could pick really anybody from there, but it was a senior from East Central, and I can't remember her name, so I apologize to all the East Central volleyball girls. But she was a senior this year, one of their senior leaders, and she really stepped up, as did that volleyball team. I can't remember.
Could I lend you one?
Yeah.
How about Jenna Burmaster from Bram? She was a senior leader for the Bombers, and she was kind of a do everything player on the court.
Yeah, she really did. I called that one game with you, and I was watching Bram, even though Rush City won. But Bram, the way they play, and she really was everywhere. I mean, she did everything for that team. It was a lot of fun to watch. So I think those are all good picks. Again, I apologize to the entire East Central volleyball team for not being able to come up with one. I can't remember her name, but I know who I'm talking about. But so we talked about Player of the Year. Now we'll move on to the next award. Again, this is kind of just our awards, but the most improved team. Just taking a look at the team who took the biggest leap from last year to this year. Maybe not in wins, losses, but just took that leap and is in a good position going forward. Adam, again, we'll start with you on that one.
I think you could maybe put a couple teams into this basket. I couldn't decide between either Mora or East Central.
Yeah.
Because Mora ended last year 6-21, 15-13 this year. East Central 5-19 last year. I think hovering around 500 as well. I believe 13-15 this year. So a really big jump up from both those squads.
I think that those two are great picks. On my list, I had about 4 different teams listed here.
So there's so many you can pick from.
It worked out perfect. You took 2 of them, and now I can take 2 other ones.
And leave Ethan with nothing.
Exactly.
There we go.
Yeah. He can pick whoever's left. I think that what Kristen Monkman's got going with the Mora volleyball team was tremendous. They went from 6-21 to 15-13, and they were competitive in their matchup that I did in the playoffs against, I believe it was Esco.
Yeah.
They're a good team that had a chance to be able to do some stuff. They played a lot better as the season went along, and they're really kind of building a nice program up there. I think what they're doing is really good. East Central, obviously, the 5-17 to the 13-15, a big jump. We talked about the North Branch jump that they had getting close to state. But I think for me, I'm probably going to go with Malacca volleyball.
Yeah.
They finished 10-17 last year, and they jumped to 20-9 this year. Coach Jamie Taylor does a tremendous job with that group. He's been there for years. He's got a good coaching staff around him, and I think that what they're kind of building and continuing to do it. They're going to graduate a little heavy this year, but I think that they had just a lot of really nice pieces. And it was another one of those games similar to Mora against Esco that when we went over and did the game over in Sauk Rapids, the Malacca held tough with the team that was one of the top teams in the state. I think it ended up being a 3-0 match, but it wasn't a 3-0 type of match. That's the weird thing about volleyball, that you could have a 3-0 match and it could be extra points and right up to the end, just the way that the ball goes sometimes. But I think that Malacca would probably have to be my pick, finishing 20-9.
You stole mine. I was going to take Malacca.
All right. So what I meant was North Branch.
I am going to take North Branch because after those 2 state years, they kind of. I don't want to say they kind of took a dip in play, because they have been one of the more talented teams around our area, and they play in a section which is just extremely talented. Their conference, nonetheless, is just ridiculous to try and get through and play. But I am going to take North Branch. Last year, again, not the greatest of years, but they were kind of getting back to what we consider North Branch volleyball. And this year we've seen it again, finishing as the number 1 seed in their section, getting all through, getting the conference win, the conference championship again. Again, their conference is home to Becker, Cambridge Isani, Princeton, Monticello. So they played some really tough teams. And one of the losses they had in their section at the beginning of the year was Grand Rapids. They lost 3-0 to them at the beginning of the year. They had to play them in the first round of the playoffs. I watched that game. I thought, oh man, Grand Rapids is coming in here to get the upset. North Branch fought through and really showed why they were the top seed in the section. And it wasn't just, okay, they fought back and won 3-1. it was coming back and finishing off each set. It was the players and how complimentary they were to each other, and the coach. Obviously, we know Coach Selbishka. He's a great coach, like many of the coaches we have in our local area, but another one of those who has been there for just years and has watched this program grow to a state champion, getting back to state, and then kind of having years where they may not have finished where they wanted to, now back to this. And they're a team who, again, will graduate heavy, but I think with the talent, the younger talent that they have, they are going to come back next year and be a very good team once again, which leads us into our next award, if you will, which is Most Improved Player. This is a tough one because we have so many players. And again, we're not singling out one because we feel like all the rest didn't do enough. There are way too many that we could mention. But for Most Improved Player, for each of you, who would you have for that? And it can be a couple, obviously.
You know, we're going to hear a lot about Abby Thielander and McKenna Gar, but it's sort of, what do you see as a most improved player from last year to this year, or from the beginning of the year to the end of the year? I'm going to go with from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. I thought Ellie Thielander, Abby's sister, 8th grader coming in.
I thought she was super young.
Yeah, first year coming in as an 8th grader playing varsity volleyball, and just coming in, and then towards the end of the year, she was that calming influence, even as an 8th grader out there, who was very consistent and knew exactly where to be when whatever the game or match brought.
Yeah, she again, you mentioned she's only an 8th grader, which is ridiculous because you think about Abby Thielander, her sister. She also started as an 8th grader, and to see Ellie take that leap, I was really surprised because at the beginning of the year, I seen her play a little bit, kind of the varsity team as a whole. It was like, okay, they're going to be good, but how good will they be? And we saw what they turned into. But yeah, Ellie really came to her own at the end of the year.
I think that for my pick in this, again, we're going to hear fair amount about Rush City Volleyball. They when you finish, 30-3 or 28-5 and go into state, you're going to hear a little bit more about that. I think for me, using kind of that same type of a logic and that type of idea, I'm going to look kind of more as a overall whole over the last probably maybe year or 2 to 3 years. I'm going to go with Autumn Stream. Yeah. She went from just being a tall middle hitter that's just going to be playing just the front row, rotating out. There's going to be a defensive replacement for the back row, whether it be the libero, whoever it may be. She's really developed herself into being a full rotational player, played all 6 positions, played the back row very effectively, can hit outside, can obviously still dominate inside if she needs to, and really worked her way into kind of that experienced role that we talked about, the turnover that they had. She was one of the few that were coming back, her and McKenna Gar. She was, I think, one of the players that, went from, wasn't expected to do that, but now, all right, you're going to play all the way around. And I think that she did a really great job being able to develop into that type of player.
And I think that was the key word, develop. She really did develop into that player, and Thielander did a good job of developing players over the last however many years. And we've seen the reason that they're able to get back to state now 3 years in a row, and that's one of the biggest reasons is they are able to develop that talent right there from a young age and continue it out throughout the high school level. Now, I forgot I had a computer right next to me so I could look up some of these players.
You could look up the East Central player?
I get a cheat sheet, so I get the advantage now. But no, I was looking, and I'm going to go with one from Pine City and another one from East Central. Morgan Mako. She has been the libero for Pine City now for the last 2-3 years. But this year, she was a senior, and I think she really stepped into that senior leadership role. A lot of times, she didn't necessarily get all those things on the stat sheet, but it was because of her attitude and her play taking a step forward. The team as a whole, the attitude that they had, just leaps and bounds from last year. I mean, you look at the team last year, obviously, everybody's going to be hard on themselves. I thought they were the one team that was the hardest on themselves. Any little mistake, you could just tell they kind of hung their heads. It was like, man, they get so discouraged, and it's because they want themselves to be perfect. But this year, I thought she was the leading force in that, kind of taking that role and saying, hey guys, we made a mistake, let's move forward. She always had a smile on her face. Volleyball players can get intense because we're right there. We can see their faces. We know what they're saying.
There's a lot of emotion.
Exactly. So, and some things we can't say on air, but she was one of the players who just always had a smile on her face, always encouraging, always was right there to help her teammates up. Always talking about how being positive. So she's going to be one of them. And then the other one, who was my player of the year for East Central, Mallory Hartle. She took a big leap this year in her play from last year, a junior. Really didn't get a ton of time last year, and this year she took all that time on the court and made a difference for that East Central team. Now, they had, 4 or 5 seniors on the team, and I think all 5 of them combined to help them get to that close to 500 record. But I think she was one of the top players that really did a good job of taking the inexperience that she may have had coming into this year and just building on it quickly, too. And so I think Mallory Hartle was one of the leading forces there for East Central, one of their taller players and a senior leader, and you could really tell she was one of their best hitters as well. So Mallory Hartle is going to be one of mine who I'll take as the most improved player. Which moves us into our next category, which will be Coach of the Year. I kind of think I know who we might all have in our heads for this one, but who would be your Coach of the Year for volleyball? Adam, again, we'll start it with you.
Well, I mean, I believe everybody's going to think Eric Thielander of Rush City, but I'll go a different route. I'm going to say Emily Giffro of Bram, who it's her first year in the program, taking over a squad that was around 500 last year, but they lost a lot of senior leadership last year. They started out 0-4 on the season, but they rallied to get to 14-14, which doesn't seem as impressive, but a lot of those losses were pretty darn close. You were there with me when they faced Rush City, and they were competitive with the section champion.
Yeah, they really were. That was, again, that you kind of mentioned it earlier, Andy. It might be 3-0, but it goes to it goes the distance each set, and that's one of those where it may not have went the distance each set, but it definitely, man, you could tell Bram was right there with him. And you get a few bounces to go each other way. Bram might have come out on top in that one. So I do like that pick, though, of Emily Gifford.
Yeah, she is a calming influence, and she is very knowledgeable. And you can tell that she knows what she's talking about. And she's a good teacher as well.
She is. And she graduated from Bram, too. So I think that does
About 15 minutes ago, I think.
Yeah. And she's one of the nicest humans ever, too. If you've ever talked to her, she's just, super nice. So I am going to go, I could go 2 different directions here. If I'm stealing yours, I apologize. I think we probably got 2 different people in mind, but I have a bunch more notes about the one. So I am going to go with Coach Eric Thielander. Yeah. The thing that strikes me about that is it isn't so much, yes, when you go to state, that's going to be the nod. But if you take what kind of happened with their program over the last year or so, that's, I guess, in my mind, what kind of changed things. When you have a team that is, 30-3, it finished second in state last year, right up at the top, but you graduate Cora Sayatovic, who was the setter for many years, who was absolutely tremendous. You graduate one of your biggest hitters in Lydia Bankston, who is the benefactor of a lot of those settings. And, of course, one of your major middle hitters in Kayla Diedrich. That's a lot to lose. There's a ton of stuff that you end up losing on that, and it's hard to be able to come back from that. But once you start trying to build, like we talked before, developing players into that next level, getting, whether it be Clara Neeson to be able to take that next step, Autumn Stream being able to play all the way around. Obviously the Thielanders probably learned maybe a little bit from him over the course of the years, maybe. But to be able to move somebody that young into, all right, you are now going to be the voice of reason on the floor, and you're going to be in charge of divvying up sets to all of these big hitters that are around there. Being able to develop all of that after graduating as much as they did, and like you said, we're not sure what they're going to be. They're going to be good, but are they going to be, 20-10? Are they, something like that? Maybe take a run towards state. But it was kind of, as you get to 2/3 through the season, you're like, they're going to state again.
Yep.
It's maybe they go 4 sets in the section championship, but there wasn't really anybody in the section that you thought really had a good threat against them. So I think that just what he's done, building that and rebuilding that, just reloading, I think that's probably why I got to give him the nod for me.
Again, we're going to talk about them so much, but mine was either Mike Silbishka, again, great team, or Kristen Monkman. And I think I'm going to lean more Kristen Monkman because this is her first year as the head coach at Mora. She's taking over a team that last year didn't really have, I feel like, an identity. And she took over this year, and in talking with her in our preseason interview, man, it was so refreshing to talk to her, just talking about the attitude that she wanted to see, how the girls really bought into what she wanted to bring to the table. And she did a really good job of instilling that, getting them to buy in quickly, and turning those seniors around and having them near 500. And again, you mentioned it in that ESCO game. I was getting updates from you all the time. It was like, they're in this. They could beat ESCO. And unfortunately they didn't, but I think what she has is going to be infectious for not just this year's seniors, but the juniors and sophomores and freshmen that they're going to have coming up into the years that will come after this. So Kristen Monkman is going to be my choice there.
And I love that pick because I actually had that written down as, we were talking about potentially even discussing like surprise team, and Mora was one of them. You're going from 6-21 to 15-13 with basically not all, but the bulk of the same roster. It's you get somebody to get in there and a little bit of turnover, different coaches, and like, all right, we're going to buy in and get that mindset going forward. And I think that what she's done there, I think you could put them in the most improved team, the surprise team, all of those things. I completely agree. I think that's a great choice.
Yeah, and that'll kind of lead us into the next one and our team to watch next year. We might say Rush City, but I think this could go a plethora of ways because, again, Rush City's going to be returning some young talent that are going to be good now for the next 5 years. But I'll start with you, Adam, because I know where I'm going to go. But who is your team to watch next year?
I think I'll have to go with North Branch again. I mean, they seem to be the standard bearer of our area along with Rush City. So it'll be interesting to see how they reload coming into next year.
I think that those are great picks there with that one. But on my notes, we talked about it. I am going to go with Mora. I think what Coach Monkman's going there is definitely something good. They do graduate a fair amount, but what I've seen from the juniors and the sophomores that we're playing, like it's very clear that they have some talent coming up and that she's got them kind of believing. You don't see like when they were giving up points, they don't have just shoulders shrugged and like, okay, here it comes again. It was more of a, all right, here we go. Let's, amp it back up again. Let's move forward, and that's a credit to some of that senior leadership, but it's also a credit to what Coach Monkman has there. And I think that they might be one of the teams to really look for, the next year or so.
And I totally agree with both of those picks because I think those are going to be interesting. Obviously, Rush City we mentioned. There are going to be a plethora amount of teams, but one of the teams we didn't mention that I again don't have my notes because I'm so great at preparing. But one of the teams that I haven't mentioned and I wanted to was Princeton. Princeton this year, I think, had maybe 2 seniors or 2 upperclassmen. That was it. The rest were sophomores, freshmen, and 8th graders. That was a majority of their starters. And I watched them play against Chisago Lakes, and the seniors didn't start. It was, I think they had 3 8th graders starting along with 2 other sophomores. That team is going to be one to watch, in my opinion. And Mary Patnode was another one of the coaches that I was going to talk about. But her and that team are going to be set now for the next few years, kind of like Rush City, because they have a lot of that young talent they're bringing back next year. They finished, I think, with over 20 wins this year. They finished as a really good team in the section, gave a run at the playoffs to Hermantown. I mean, this is going to be a team that we're talking about for the next few years. They might be a team that winds up in state just because of that young talent and how it's developed this year because of the experience that they got. Maybe, it was shoved on them a little bit early, but they took it and ran with it. So that would be my pick for a team to watch next year. Now, that gets us into our final category here for volleyball, which is the game of the year. That might be the hardest one. That's why I put it last. But if you had to choose, if you can, is there a game of the year for volleyball?
I think so. I think I know what you're going to pick because you were at this match. But I'm going to go a different way because you can look at this from like a lot of these from a different angle. You could look at this as 2 heavyweights going up against each other and just going blow for blow for against each other. I'm going to go with 2 teams that were really taking a step up in productivity throughout the year. The Mora and Bram game match in Bram was really fun because Mora got out to a 2-0 lead. Then Bram answered with 2 more of their own. Along with that, Bram won the 4th set 25-14, and Mora came back and won the 5th and final set in extras 16-14. That was a really fun match to watch and see where these teams are getting better, and both of them looked almost at their best at that time, and it was really fun to watch.
I think for me, I think a lot of this, may have to do with, we're going to get different viewpoints just because of being at different games. You know what I mean? I try to watch as many of your guys' games as I can, but usually I'm busy when I'm doing another game.
Right.
But I think for me, it's probably going to be a game that I had in Hinckley Finlayson earlier this year. You had mentioned East Central and kind of what they got going there. It was a team, East Central finished with 13 wins, Hinckley finished with 4 wins, but Hinckley showed some flashes at different times throughout the course of the year. And everything kind of, came to fruition in this particular game. It was a game that went 5. Ended up being East Central won it 15-16 in the third. So the fifth set, I should say. So it wasn't it was kind of anticlimactic as far as the very finish. But otherwise, before that, East Central won the first 2 sets, but Hinckley had a lead of at least 4 or 5 within the first 10 points of all 4 of the first games. East Central came back and won the first set 26-24, won the second set 25-22 before Hinckley was able to, you could kind of see like, okay, we have to, it was not a matter of try hard, but you have to like, all right, we need a little bit more to finish off a game. And Hinckley came away with, 25-17 and then 25-20 to get it to a 5th set. But all 4 of the 5 games, I should say, were very close, including a couple of them that went to extra points. And it was a tremendous night, and there was, a lot of motion and a lot of, you talked about, volleyball players, like, really flash a lot of emotion. And you could see some frustration after they'd be up 6 or 7 to 1 to start games 1 and 2, but East Central would battle back and just chip away. And you could see some frustration mounted, but they didn't let it get to them. They were able to force a game 5, and East Central come away with a victory. But that was probably one of the best games that I had all year.
There are so many great games that we can talk about, but the one I'm going to pick is probably the one that you were talking about, and that's Rush City Annandale at the state tournament. Rush City, they didn't wind up winning that one, but the way they played and the way they came back after everything that was happening in what was the 4th and final set, but just the way they came out and their attitude about it. It was just so great to see them playing that way and their determination. They never hung their head. They were down by, I forgot what it was, but they were down nearly 10 points in that final set. They came back. They tied it up. It was back and forth. We went into extra points. It was like, Rush City's going to pull this off. Sadly, they weren't able to, but just the way they played in that set, knowing that it was could be the final set. And not letting the emotion get to them, not letting it be too big of a moment, not letting themselves get too high, too low. Just coming back out and the smile that we've seen. It was crazy. I think was it Abby Thielander?
Yeah, it was Abby Thielander.
Just her smile that she had. She came out with this energy about her, and it was like, whoa, this is so cool to see. And it was from an underclassman. Yeah. And it was infectious for the entire team. And that's why that's my pick for game of the year. Just because you look at that game and it's like, okay, they wound up losing. But man, that is gonna bode well for them going into next year. It is, because coach is gonna look at that game and go, look what we did. Look what we did to come back. We lost, but look what we did. Look at that attitude that we had. We got to keep that going forward. When we're down, we got to understand it's not, we talked about it in that game too. You can't get all, 5-6 back at a time. It's one at a time. And I think a lot of it has to do with the attitude. So that is going to be my pick for game of the year. Maybe an obvious choice, but that's my pick anyways. So we're going to take a commercial break here. Hear a word from some of our fine sponsors. Then we'll come back and we'll talk football awards, as it was a pretty fun football season as well. So we'll take a commercial break, hear a word from our fine sponsors, then back here on both KBK 95.5 and WCMP Anthem Country.
Don't let deer derail your future. Pine Insurance Agency and Grinnell Mutual encourage you to practice safe driving, especially this time of the year. If you see a deer on the road, slow down, stay calm, and don't swerve to avoid it. Find more driving tips at GrinnellMutual.com. We are dedicated to your safety, so you can trust in tomorrow. Contact Pine Insurance Agency, your local Grinnell Mutual agent at pineagency.us today for all your insurance needs. Trust in tomorrow is a registered trademark of Grinnell Mutual Reassurance Company.
Brad here from Lee's Pro Shop in Pine City. We're a full-service lettering shop with a full line of athletic supplies for any sport. We have professional staff here at Lee's Pro Shop to customize your orders. We are the pros who specialize in athletic apparel and equipment. We even do trophies and awards as well as computerized engraving in the store. Let Lee's Pro Shop help you with any athletic apparel. Lee's Pro Shop, servicing our communities since 1973, where the passion for sports begins.
Hey there, neighbors. Matt Winsan, CEO Burnett Dairy. Farmers are the people that wake up before the sun, who battle the elements, and tend to their crops and herds with a passion that runs deep in their veins. At this time, I would personally like to thank the farmers. From all of us at Burnett Dairy Cooperative to all of our incredible farmers, thank you. Burnett Dairy Cooperative. Real farms, real flavor.
Your journey to smile with your forever starts at Embrace Orthodontics. The team at Embrace is committed to providing world-class care and a remarkable orthodontic experience. Choose between custom Light Force braces or Invisalign clear aligners with locations in Pine City, Lindstrom, and Cambridge, and a plan to fit your budget, whether you have insurance or not. Embrace Orthodontics will make your smile journey comfortable, convenient, and customized just for you. Visit EmbraceMN.com today to find out how to set up your free exam. EmbraceMN.com. Embrace Orthodontics, a smile you will embrace forever.
Dale's Heating and Appliance, your local heating and appliance expert, is committed to making your family's comfort their top priority. And now you can add water softeners to their list of expertise. Dale's now offers water softener sales or rentals along with installation, service, and salt delivery. So if your home needs quality water, make the call to your already trusted experts at Dale's or just visit dalesheatingandappliance.com. dalesheatingandappliance.com.
Arrowhead Transit, your community, your ride. Arrowhead Transit is proud to support this station and bring you reliable public transportation in your community. Whether you need to get to work, school, or the doctor's office, our friendly drivers and comfortable buses are here to serve you. We're committed to connecting communities and making transportation accessible for everyone. Arrowhead Transit is your community partner in getting around. Arrowhead Transit is a supporting sponsor of the station and is dedicated to supporting our local communities.
Back here on both Anthem Country 106.5 FM, AM 1350, and Nice 95.5 FM, KBEK, Game Day Gilman, joined by, again, Adam Hefty and Annie Beckstrom. And now we're looking at some of our football awards, getting set for our football recap. As you can see, the flashing of the football recap there. Taking a look at some of our teams here, just a quick recap. Looking at 9-man, Ogilvie had another good year, 6-4. Class A was really good. Mille Lacs finished 8-3. Bram 5-5. East Central at 1-8. Then in Class 2A, it was Rush City who kind of came out and did what they had to do. They were 8-1 on the season. Hinckley finishing 1-8. Then in Class 3A, Section 5, that was a section that it took a hit this year, but it was still talented. Foley 4-6, Mora 3-6, Malacca 3-7, and Pine City 1-8. Then in Class 4A, Section 3, Chisago Lakes finished 4-6. In Section 7, it was North Branch at 7-3, getting the number 1 seed there. And then in Section 8, it was Princeton at 9-1. Of course, they lost to Becker in the section championship. Then in Class 5A, in Section 7, it was Cambridge Isani at 0-9. But taking a look here at the first award that we have, Team of the Year for football, guys. Your pick on that.
I'm gonna go with Mille Lacs, making it 1 game away from, or 2 points away from the state tournament. They really showed me something. They got a lot better throughout the year.
I think Mille Lacs was absolutely tremendous. I have them on my list for a couple of different things. I think that, as far as team of the year, I kind of got it between 2 different ones, but I'll pick one and then I'll let you take the other one on that one. It was Princeton. I seen in one of the very first games of the year against Malacca in the Pizza Bowl, and they were so balanced. They could run the ball, they could pass the ball. They had multiple people that could run the ball. They were just so deep, and again, losing to Becker in the section championship, which Becker went on to win the championship. So, I mean, if you're going to lose to somebody, that's kind of what you're hoping for in a way. I think that I'd probably have to give the nod to Coach, I believe Coach Klophocky with that squad and what they've been able to do over there.
It's been tremendous what they've been able to do, and for being so consistent over the last few years too. What was it? Last year they had kind of a down year, but they were still good, and then this year coming back and doing it all again. Mille Lacs is another good pick. I've got a few that I could pick from. One of the ones was Foley. Again, another late season surge, getting them into the playoffs. Like, where does this come from? I don't get. They play so not bad during the regular season, but the wins just don't stack up. And then you get late season, it's like, oh boy, here we go again. Foley's going to be that team to go and get to this championship game with a losing record, but. I've got a couple teams, and one is going to be a team that I think people may not like, but just because of the record-wise, But it's between North Branch. I think North Branch is another team. Again, 3 years in a row where you've been, 4 years, excuse me, you've been to the section championship. You're the number 1 seed. You get a home playoff game with some of the talent that they have graduated over the last few years, and just being able to kind of recoup that in the younger talent has been phenomenal. The last 2 years, I don't think last year anybody thought they were going to get back to the state tournament just because they lost so many seniors. They got back, won a state game, made it to the U.S. Bank Stadium, and played against Hutchinson, who wound up winning the championship there. But North Branch was a really good team this year. They were a team who, that section was ridiculous. You had Hermantown and Duluth-Denfeld that were just insane this year. You have Denfeld, who has a young man playing running back, going to go D1 and play. He was crazy to watch. Hermantown, again, always a good team. They were, again, this year. But North Branch, just every single game they were in, played so tough. They lost to Grand Rapids by 1 during the season, played them in their playoff game. It went into overtime. They stopped them on the goal line, went in 2 plays later to win it. Just a phenomenal season.
Sounds
honestly.
like game of the year type of talk over here.
We're
not there yet, Ethan. Slow down.
But the other one, again, was Foley. Again, just another late season surge for them. I just was so surprised at how they were able to kind of turn things around right at the end of the year and get into the playoffs. And as coaches will say, we want to be playing our best football come October. And I thought they did that. So it's between one of those two teams. I really couldn't decide. But we all had, I thought, pretty good picks. There were, again, lots to choose from.
I think my other one, I probably would put Rush City in that conversation as well. You finished 8-0 during the regular season. You know what I mean? Unfortunately, losing in the first round, but at the same time, you finish 8-0. That's a pretty good year.
It is. It is. They play in a tough section though. Which and what's sad about their section is they don't play anyone during the regular season. So they get into the playoffs and they're not real sure what the competition looks like. And it's sad because that section again was loaded. It was extremely loaded.
And I think that we talked about that. Well, we talked a little bit off air, but I think we talked earlier this year during week 7 before we went into the final week of the regular season. The section 4A stacked up like this. Norwood Young America 7-0, Rush City 7-0, Cannon Falls 6-1, Randolph 6-1, and St. Agnes 5-2.
Yeah.
And then Maple Lake was 0-7. So there's Maple Lake. But at the same time, you look at it, 6 out of the 7 teams had less than 2 losses, or 2 losses or less. I mean, that's just an incredible section to try to be able to. Are you the 1 seed? We're flipping a coin at this point in time.
Well, and I was looking at it, and the seeding is based on the QRF. And Randolph, I believe, was second to last in the section, and they were 13th in the QRF.
Yeah.
They were the 13th best team in the entire state in AA. Like, that is just ridiculous.
Yeah, that just goes to show you the talent in that section all year long. And again, it's sad that Rush City doesn't get to play those teams because I feel like if they even were able to play one during the regular season, they would have been much better off in their playoff game against Cannon Falls. So it's unfortunate that they didn't get to. Hopefully that'll change here in the coming years because it needs to.
Well, that section is so large geographically. I mean, Cannon Falls down by Rochester. Like, what are we doing here?
It's confusing to say the least. But which will move us on to our player of the year for football. Again, we're not picking one just because we feel like they're better than everybody, but we're just going based off of performance. So this is another tough one, but I'll lead it off with you, Adam.
I'm going to go with Sam Habeisen, the junior quarterback from Mille Lacs. He is just carving defenses up, whether it be through the air or his ability to run as well.
See, and you took that right out from underneath me there.
You're welcome. Now you get to pick another person.
I mean, I guess, if I could, maybe go a little bit off the board to a certain extent, it would have to be that running back that you were talking about earlier from up north that's going Division I. Seen him earlier against Mora and looked every bit the part, just absolutely tremendous talent, and not exactly from our local area, but I think from our local area, I'd have to agree with Habeisen on that.
That's a really good pick. I really can't go against that one, but if I had to, I'd either say, and this might have been one that I'm stealing from you, but Matthew Kempf, he stepped into a position he hasn't ever played. He had to step into their quarterback role. No one was there I shouldn't say no one, but they had to have someone, and they chose their senior leader in Matthew Kempf to take over that role. And, he's one of their fielders in baseball, so he's got an arm, but taking over a quarterback position that you've never played before as a senior and helping your team go 8-0, there's not many players who can say that they've been able to do that. Again, switching positions. So, and they're changing their offense too. So there was a lot that he had to absorb in a very short amount of time, and I thought he did a really good job of it. We've seen a lot of his deep balls. I know you were able to cover a few of those games, and just his ability to chuck it downfield and his decision making was off the charts. If I had to pick another one, again going back to kind of North Branch, but Jacob Robillard. He's been their starting quarterback for the last 2 years. He was one of their running backs as a sophomore. Just his ability to lead that team, his toughness, his attitude, his confidence, just everything about him kind of exudes what their coach Justin Voss wants on that team, and they want a family, and he really takes that upon himself, and that's just a very unselfish team too in North Branch. But either one of those guys would be my pick for Player of the Year, which moves us on to Most Improved Team now. Again, we could go a lot of different places with this. I think I know a couple of the teams we might lean towards, but Adam, yours.
I'm going to go with Rush City. You talked about them as one of your teams of the year, but with a disappointing year last year, but coming back, going undefeated in the regular season, and their ability to be very creative, especially on the offensive side, with their play calling, because as you said, Matthew Kempf not really used to being quarterback. That could be a deficit, but it also could be an asset because you can split them out wide and have one of your other senior leaders, whether it be Logan Kirby or Jamison Wood or Dietrich, just toss it up to him. And it's really a fun offense to watch.
It was.
I think for me, it's kind of a weird one. I shouldn't say a weird one to pick, but I guess in my mind, it kind of really fits the mold of Most Improved within the same year. I'd probably have to go with the Malacca Wolves. They started out 0-6. They were playing pretty well. They were in some games, but they struggled on defense a little bit, and they struggled on the offense and defensive line. They were starting a lot of youth there. They had a lot of underclassmen. They had graduated really heavy. So trying to develop that, and throughout the course of the year, Coach Tallberg had to make a lot of changes and kind of shuffling pieces and getting people into certain positions. By the end of the year, they were playing very well. They won 3 games to finish the year, including a playoff game over the top of the Mora Mustangs. That was a team that was probably on paper was better during the regular season, and Malacca improved markedly throughout the year. Again, unfortunately, losing to Annandale in the postseason, but I feel like that's one of the things that I think stood out to me, that they went from a team that they might not win a game, they might struggle, and then they just started getting a little momentum, especially into the playoffs.
And they're such a tough team. I had them once when they played Annandale. Annandale was in the state championship last year. Annandale was noticeably better than Malacca, but they did not back down. They took every hit. They actually came back to make it a closer game. That quarterback, I forgot what the quarterback's name was for Malacca.
Jack Patnode?
Yeah, I mean, he's all of 5'9", 5'10", and he'll take on defenders that are linebackers and won't even blink. It was really fun to call that game just with their toughness.
Yeah, we seen that in game 1 too against Princeton. It was like, whoa, he's a young guy, but he's willing to take these shots, and it was really cool to see. Mine is going to be the hometown team. Actually, it's going to be Pine City. You talk about this team who hasn't won a game in a while. They haven't even scored a touchdown in a while. They come out this year not scoring in their first 4 games, and in fact, they're giving up quite a few points. And not only that, they're playing some of the top teams in the state: Grand Rapids, Pequot Lakes, Duluth, Denfeld. Those are your first 3 games of the season. That is
Good
ridiculous.
Luck.
Exactly. Then they get to Hibbing. Now they lose that game, but that's a game where if you look at it, it's like, okay, something's turning the page here. Then they go up on the road to Proctor and beat them 20-0. Not only did they win the game, they get their first touchdown of the year. This is a couple weeks after, obviously, and then they shut them out defensively. And that defense really made a difference. And speaking of their first touchdown of the game, they made that against Mora. And that was incredible to see, because talking with the coaches throughout the season was like, we feel like we're 1 touchdown away. If we can get into the end zone, it's going to look a lot different. And it did. They shut Mora out in the second half. They did not allow a Mora touchdown. They scored in the second half. Then they went up, beat Proctor 20-0. Now they had 2 Harbors, who again was one of the top teams in the state. They lost them 44-6, though. They scored a touchdown again. Then they hosted Esco.
I did that game. That was the craziest thing ever. Running time in the fourth quarter, they went right down the field.
Yeah.
And they did like a halfback pass from Braxton Peets to the end zone. It was absolutely crazy. It was so much fun.
That's awesome. But, I mean, then they hosted Esco. I don't know if you guys seen that score at all. They only lost to Esco by 4. They held Esco to, what was it? I think it was 6 points in the first half. And then they came out and took a lead over that. It was it was a game where you feel like they're gonna beat Esco. They're the better team. Looking at that game, Pine City was the better team. You talk about Esco, you're like, there's no way. There's no way they were better than Esco. They were the better team in that game. And unfortunately, they just allowed a quick drive to get Esco down the field and score. But they lost that game by 4 points. And it was just so cool to see. They had scored a touchdown up to that point in 4 straight games. Their defense had, the most they allowed was 2 Harbors at 44 points, but their defense was just getting markedly better. Then they go into the playoff game, unfortunately lose 35-8, but again, they scored in their 5th straight game. You could tell the mentality was just taking a turn for the better. I can't wait to see this team next year. But moving off of that, we'll go into our most improved player. Again, this is not going to be an easy decision, but we'll start, Adam, again with you.
I think I'm going to go with Tyler Eklund for Bram, the cornerback and wide receiver for the Bombers. Bram losing a lot of players from last year, basically losing the entire line of scrimmage from their team, from their state tournament team last year. But Tyler Eklund sort of stepped into that leadership role, scoring multiple touchdowns on multiple games, and really just a speedster out there, just taking over some games.
I think for me, I'm going to go back over to Malacca on that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to be kind of a little more Malacca heavy. I've seen them more often than not this year. But I think that what Jack Patnode was able to do, we talked a little bit about the quarterback situation before. I think the one that you're referring to that was tough and a youngster was Landon Fullerton. I think he was a sophomore, tough kid, kind of a little bit, undersized, but tough kid, wasn't afraid of anything. Yeah. And I don't know if it was 100% if it was injury, if they just made a change, but he kind of became more of a wingback, and then they brought in the senior Jack Patnode towards the end of the year, and he kind of provided that calming influence, kind of that experienced leadership position. Had been kind of, back up and kind of in and around that quarterback position, but then it's kind of, all right, kid, it's your team now. And he kind of took it and ran with it. And I think that was something that, probably had it in him, but, given that opportunity, he kind of flourished.
He really did. And I had talked with their head coach, and he just talked about, we're going to go with something different just to see what we got. He felt like, the youngster was not necessarily too much for him, but they were just like, we need to see something different just so you don't lose all confidence. And for coaches, that's hard to do because you give him the start to begin the season, say you're our starter, then to switch. I mean, that's such a delicate situation too, because obviously he's more than likely going to be their quarterback next year. But you're saying, okay, you got to give it up just for now to the senior. And I thought he handled that situation well. The team handled it well. The young man handled it well. Patnode came in, did a really good job, helped them go on and win a playoff game. They shut out Morrill, which I don't think anybody saw coming, but he did a really good job. That's a really good one that I was leaning towards as well. But there is a player for Pine City, and I'm getting Evan Denz. Evan Denz had to step in for Pine City and be their quarterback. He started out as their running back and a linebacker. Their starting quarterback, unfortunately, went down. He had to step in and be their quarterback. He's a running back. Again, we talked about Kemp stepping into a new position. He had to step into this new position 3/4 of the way throughout the season, and he did a really good job of stepping in, taking on that role, being the leader out there, calling plays. That's another thing I think we don't talk about enough is they have to call these plays in the huddle. If you're a running back, you're used to listening to it. Now you've got to get it, run back to the huddle more times than not, and rattle it back off to your teammates. That's not easy to do. Plus, you got to worry about the defense and this guy. Are they lined up right? So I thought he did a really good job stepping in, again, almost 3/4 of the way through the season and taking over the quarterback job. So he would be my most improved player. Now on to Coach of the Year. There could be 5, 6, 7 that we could mention.
Yeah.
I'll start. I'm going to go, though, with a team, again, that didn't really necessarily perform record-wise that well. And, again, maybe I'm a little bit more biased because it is around here and I call a few of their games, but I'm going to go with North Branch's Justin Voss. I could, again, pick Pine City's 2 head coaches, Berger and Fort, just because of the way they turn things around. But I'm going to go with Voss again. They lost a lot of talent last year due to graduation. He had a lot of injuries come up this year. They had a lot of their key players that go out at certain times. And the way he talks to that team, it is a family there, and that's what he preaches. And that team pulls that from him, and they want to do that for him. As much as the coaches talk about it's, the players, the player-led team, he really did a good job of getting them to understand, hey, we're still in this. We're still here. We still got to compete. We're still competing. Just the way he took over. Another one could be Sean Kunke. The way that, again, they lost so much last year due to graduation, and then getting them back to 500 this year.
Yeah.
It's so tough. It's one of those four for me. I really can't decide. I think Justin Voss I'd lean more towards, but again, any one of those four.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Austin Hackett for Mille Lacs. We've seen Mille Lacs throughout the years, and we've kind of seen something like this coming. There was talent on the horizon, and you saw it. You could see Sam Haybeisen chuck the ball around, and you're like, okay, there's some talent here. But how many times have we seen a talented team not take that step?
Yeah.
And that's sometimes just as hard as getting that talent in the first place. It's just taking that talent and putting it in the right position. And I thought Austin Hackett did a great job with that, not just with the offense, but defensively as well. They were really, really stalwart on the defensive line.
I think for me, there's two that come to mind, and I'm just spacing on the name at this point in time because I didn't call any of their games. The Rush City coaching staff, you go 8-0, you gotta at least acknowledge, and I apologize. I failed. I didn't call any of their games, so I'm a little bit out of the loop on that. But I think that a team that I did see quite a bit or whatever. I think that the job that Craig Tallberg did for Malacca this year, again, going from a team that graduated pretty heavy a couple of years ago. They're coming off of not the most successful 3-6 year last year, but pretty decent. Graduate pretty heavy, and now you got to kind of rebuild and retool. They do have some talent coming up, but it's not there yet. You've seen like a guy like Fullerton have that opportunity. We're going to do that, but then to make that decision, to make that change to Pat Node, it may sound like kind of a small change, but to the way that team, you mentioned it before in the Annandale game, that they seem to always have that mentality that we're not going to give up. We're not going to shrug our shoulders. We're not going to back down. In the game that we did against Princeton early in the year, like it was very clear that we're going to keep trying all the way to the final buzzer. Like we're not giving up at all. And I think that that's a reflection of the head coach. And you've seen that they win a couple of wins at the end of the year. And it's good to see them be able to get some of those wins. But then a big time win in the postseason against a close rival like Mora. May not play them during the year every year, but at the same time, they're still pretty close. They know the guys. It's something to be able to see. And I thought what they did was pretty impressive to be able to go from 0-6 to get some confidence building as the season went along.
I think another one we can match up is Klopp Hockey from Princeton. I mean, taking that team again and just building on what they did last year, not the best success last year, getting to this year, going undefeated during the regular season, getting to their section championship against Becker. Now they lost that game, but I was watching it closely. They were still in it to the very end, so that's another one. But we'll move on to, which kind of talks about our team to watch next year, and some of these coaches that we mentioned are probably teams that we'll talk about. I'm probably going to steal yours, but I'm going to go with Mille Lacs. Okay. Mille Lacs is going to be the team that I want to watch next year, that I think people should keep an eye on next year, because they are returning some of those key players. As you mentioned, Haybeisen, he's back. And he was one of the most talented. When I talked to coaches, they mentioned him first. They said, we got to watch out for him. He has to be the guy that we're taking care of first and foremost. So Mille Lacs is going to be the team that I'm going to go with for team to watch next year. You can name a bunch of other ones. Rush City, just to see how they'll improve. Pine City again. I think Princeton would be another one to watch. But if I had to pick just one, it is definitely going to be Mille Lacs.
Well, I do have another team. Haha, okay. Joke's on you. But just piggybacking off of that, where I spoke about Mille Lacs taking that talent and taking that next step. Well, now they have another step to take. Are they able to do that? Haybeisen now going to be a senior leader on that football team next year. Are they able to make that next step and compete in that section championship again and maybe, win it? I'm going to go with Bram. You kind of touched on it a little bit with the Coach of the Year, with Coach Sean Kunke as one of your nominees. But with a lot of the senior leadership from that state tournament last year, leaving to graduation, Coach Kunke was tasked with building a completely different game plan, because it was a completely different team where you had Jake Tepley and an offensive line that was bigger than a lot of 2A, 3A offensive lines, and they rode that offensive line all the way to the state tournament. They didn't have that offensive line this year. So they had a little trouble there. They were able to scheme around it. They lost the first couple of games in a row, but finished 500 on the season, taking Mille Lacs basically to the end in both games, because they lost by a touchdown to Mille Lacs in Bram and then in the section tournament as well. So they spent about half the year trying to figure out who they were. And they were able to come out of that 500 on the season. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they come up with next year. There's not a lot of seniors graduating. There's a few, Dalton Bankston, one of those seniors. So they're going to have to sort of pick up the slack there. But a lot of those players are coming back. Tyler Eklund, Garrett Lidke in the quarterback position. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where they go from here.
If you can get some of those skill positions coming back, like it makes it in a way easier to retool. I'm not saying that like other positions, like honestly, personally, I think offense and defensive line are like the keys to success, but you can still develop guys into some of those positions. Skill positions are just usually so much tougher to find the right guy for that. I did like the idea of Mille Lacs. That's who I probably got more notes on on this one. They only had 8 seniors. Granted, 2 of them were wide receivers, and Justice and Creedon Spangler, and those are going to be 2 big losses that they have. But when you bring back a guy like Haybeisen, just an absolute stud. You know, just that's the only way you can really put it. He's throwing it all over the place, making good decisions. He puts your team in a position to be able to win. I think that with only 8 seniors, you're going to be able to at least protect in front of him for the most part. You know, they're going to be able to retool, and I think they're going to be right back there. But I think that I'd probably also mention, you know, Malakia in there as well. Yes, they were 3-7, 3-6 last year, 3-7 this year. I'm going to kind of do a little bit longer, though, because I think next year might be kind of around that same type of record. But in about 2 years, they have some kids that are coming up that are absolutely tremendous. We talked a little bit about the sophomore quarterback that started for a little while this year in Landon Fullerton. They got some other kids that are playing that are in some of the younger leagues that are just absolutely tremendous. And I think that they got something really building in Malacca. And it might not necessarily be next year. They might surprise us a little bit, but I think especially in 2 years, I think they're a team to look for.
I like that pick.
So before we get into the one of the final sections of this football awards, some of the teams that we haven't really mentioned in this, some teams that really didn't have the seasons they wanted, I thought it'd be good to touch on them a little bit. East Central having a few problems, but finding some good things towards the end of the season as well. So we'll see what they have next year. Hinckley Finlayson, I did not see Hinckley Finlayson or Mora. So do you guys have any thoughts on those two squads?
The way they were able to eke out, get a win, not eke it out, but get a win and stay competitive all throughout the year. They had really low numbers. I couldn't tell you how many, but throughout the entire program, it wasn't a lot.
Hinckley Finlayson.
Yeah, and it was tough for them, and they had a lot of games in which they played really good teams this year too, which didn't help them. But for them to have such low numbers, to have a good amount of inexperience, they went with 2 quarterbacks, and to be in some of the games that they were in, I thought they did a really good job. Again, with the low numbers that they had, for them to play as well as they did with the little numbers, I got to give them a shout out on that.
I would have to agree. I did see Hinckley once earlier this year in a game actually in Hinckley, and it's the same kind of information. I'd seen Mora probably 2 or 3 times throughout the year, including the playoff game against Malacca. And I think it was just a matter of shorthanded might not be the right way to be able to put it, but kind of like you're saying that they just didn't quite have the weapons. They didn't have the depth, at some of those positions. They had a couple of, really good moments throughout the course of the year. I think, like especially with the Mora team that you mentioned, something to be able to kind of take a nod at that. That's probably, if I were to say a highlight of the year for me, was an absolutely tremendous play by Schwartzbauer. I wrote it down. Cole Schwartzbauer. He read the eyes of a quarterback, and I think this was against Proctor. But they were throwing the ball down the field, and he was probably 2/3 of the way at a safety position on the other side of the field, more up the middle. And he read the eyes and took off towards the ball before it was thrown, and one-handed kind of bobbled it a little bit and never brought that other hand over there. And before he brought that one in, and then he didn't return it for a touchdown, but it was such an amazing play to watch on a highlight. To see him streak across the field and just be able to put that paw out there and be able to eventually bring it in. It was just an incredible catch. And they had some really nice plays, and they had some really talented kids. Just they were rebuilding their offensive line, and they just didn't quite have the guns up there to be able to get anything going this year.
Yeah, that's actually a really good team to talk about. Some of the other ones are Cambridge Isani, 0-9 on the year. They're also in a coaching change here, but I felt like they're getting kind of this new way about going about things. They want to take a different way than what they have in years past. And to take that as a brand new coach coming in to get the seniors to buy in, it's hard. I'm not saying the seniors didn't, but to be able to try and do that is very hard. Ogilvie is another team who graduated heavy last year. They still went 6-4. They're in a new section now where they play Nevis and a bunch of these good teams. Cromwell Wright, another one. Cherry. So for them to finish the year as they did, 6-4, with how heavy they graduated last year, we got to give a shout out to them too, because they still played really well despite graduating so heavy last year. Which moves us on into our final category of football awards, which is the game of the year. I have about 3-4 different ones that I can come up with. But for you guys, what would be your game or games of the year?
I'm going to go with the section championship in section 7A with Mille Lacs and Deer River. Up in Cloquet, it's cold. It was pretty nice. I mean, it was 35, 40 degrees. It was fine. Not for a guy who's sitting outside a press box, but it was fine if you had pads on and everything. But no, so Mille Lacs, Deer River played better. They did, but they got into goal situations, and Mille Lacs stopped them turnover on downs, not once, not twice, but 3 times. And they were in position to win this game in the final minutes of the 4th quarter, but fumbling and then getting to another goal situation, and just Deer River able to just punch it in there with less than a minute to go and getting the 2-point conversion, and that seemed to be the difference. But that was a really fun game to watch, a defensive struggle. A lot of these people watch football for the offense and the high-flying Patrick Mahomes. I love a real good defense who really stifles an offense and doesn't let anything happen.
I don't know if he's so high-flying this year, but
not to my fantasy. So I think for me, I would probably go with, I know I'm kind of going back to Malacca a little bit, but it was the Malacca-Mora playoff game. And it was one of the first games that we've been adding to our staff. It's great to be able to get out to as many games as we possibly can, but adding a couple new guys to our staff and be able to kind of expand how many games we can get out there. We might need a bigger round table for the winter season here. But Pete Ballmer, who's from the Mora area, so it's kind of interesting, me from the Malacca area and him from the Mora area, kind of a little dynamic in the booth on that one.
Now, neither of you went over the edge,
I thought we did pretty good, trying to be able to stay pretty narrow. I do come from the old Ty Lagerman school of staying right in the middle of everything. But I thought that was an incredible game. It wasn't the closest of games. I don't remember if it was 40 something to nothing.
Something like that.
Whatever it was. So it wasn't exactly the closest of games, but it was one of those games that at one point you had to just pick your jaw up off the floor. You know what I mean? Malacca had been 0-6 earlier in the season. They finished the season 2-6, but they had a couple of wins coming in. Mora had some success throughout the year. They had won some games towards the end of the season. It looked like it was going to be a tremendous game. Before the game, me and Pete Ballmer were talking. We're like, this could be maybe a little bit of an upset. Malacca could maybe do something here. It'd be a little bit of a shock, but you could see something happen in there. And as the game started and went along through the first and second quarters, the first half, we were like, what's happening? What's going on right now? It was kind of a shock from both sides of things, and it was just a crazy game to be a part of, and I think everybody was just kind of stunned. Even the crowd was kind of stunned with that one. It was just a surprising type of game, and you could see the jubilation on one side, and I think the Morris sideline was almost more like, what happened? More surprised more than this. You go up, even Malacca the next game, you go up against a team like Annandale. I mean, you want it. David versus Goliath, we can shock the world. You do everything, but at the same time, you still have that kind of in the back of your mind, like, I don't know.
Well, and Annandale might have had a little bit of edge due to the power outage that happened. Yeah, I'm not saying
I know,
it's a conspiracy, but
Yeah,
You're
they were-
not saying it either.
Exactly. Wink, wink. Yeah, absolutely. That was a crazy situation.
yeah, because I remember getting a text from you and you said there was no power. I was like, wait a minute, he told me there was going to be power up there. No, it's this. I was like,
Yeah,
oh,
the field
weird.
was dead. They got the lights to turn on for the field, but that was it. The whole press box, no power. Nothing.
Yeah,
They ran a generator for the concession stand to get hot dogs out, but
Good.
Important,
They got the important
yeah,
things done.
eventually we had enough daisy chain, extension cords.
Yeah.
Don't tell the fire marshal. There's stuff all over the place or whatever. We were able to get the game on, but that was just a crazy game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that Malacca Moore game, it was again, not, you think close game when you think, game of the year, but that one was just more of a, wow, it was just a shock, I think, for everybody that was there.
Well, and I remember looking at that one. I was like, this should be a close game. I thought that going into that one, and I remember looking at halftime. I was like, whoa, there's no way. Is this a typo or something? And it wasn't. That was a jaw dropper for me. I think you guys know where I'm going with this one, but I got 2 North Branch games in mind. The one against actually 3. The one against Duluth-Denfeld during the regular season, when Duluth-Denfeld came in as the top dog in the section, they were looking at, I think they were more favored than North Branch just because of their running back and how he was doing. Their offense was so high-flying. I think they, at that point, were scoring over 40 points a game. Their defense was allowing less than 10 points a game. And it's North Branch who, again, graduated some good players last year. North Branch came out and beat them. I think they held them to under 14 points in that game while scoring, I think it was 38 themselves. So that was one of them, just because, again, kind of like Andy mentioned, not so much close, but it was just jaw-dropping just to see how North Branch came out in that one and took it to Duluth-Denfeld. The other one is Hermantown during the regular season. North Branch came out. I mean, they had a gigantic lead. They lost that lead. They came back to win it at the end of the game, held Hermantown back. That was another one. But the one that stands out, and I think I had mentioned this one, and this is the one you guys were talking about, North Branch Grand Rapids playoff game. They were up 14-0 at half, and it was like, okay, here we go. North Branch is on their way to another section championship. All of a sudden, their offense couldn't move the ball. Their defense couldn't seem to stop Grand Rapids' offense. Grand Rapids goes out, scores 14 unanswered in the third quarter, and it's like, oh boy, fourth quarter, here we go. They're going to lose this. They came out, stopped them in the fourth quarter. Now, again, their offense couldn't really move the ball, but their defense made the plays they needed to. It went into overtime. Grand Rapids wins the toss or loses the toss, but they go on offense first, and it's like this offense hasn't been able to be stopped. It's 3rd down and goal. I think it was Minky or I can't remember his name now. Drill, one of those two, made a huge hit on their quarterback who took off on a rollout and decided to run. He hit the quarterback hard, punched the ball loose. North Branch recovered, and they went in to score to win the game 20-14 in overtime to get back to the section championship. Just being able to watch that lead slip away and almost feeling like there's nothing we can do to stop them. And in talking with their coach afterward, he was like, it felt like there was nothing we could do, but we just talked to him. We said, hey, stay with it. We're going to stop them. And again, make one stop and we're good to go. And that's what they did. And it was incredible to watch. Too much anxiety for me. I don't like those games. I have enough anxiety as it is. Let's make it a little more lopsided next time, but that'll definitely be my pick. But that is going to be it for football awards. We're done with both volleyball and football. So next we will move on to talk about kind of what our experiences were this year with the fall sports. But first, we're going to take a word from our fine sponsors here on both KBEK and Anthem Country WCMP.
Whoa! They've got what you need at the Pine City Freeway Holiday Station Store. Right now, the Pine City Holiday Station Store off 35 has got a quick meal on the go for you. $3 gets you a hot snack or hot dog, chips, and a Polar Pop. $4 for a breakfast sandwich, hash brown, and medium coffee. Or $5 gets you a personal pizza and a 20-ounce Pepsi. Get snacking. Open 24/7, 365. They've got what you need at the Freeway Holiday Station Store in Pine City.
At Burnett Dairy Cooperative, we're more than just your local dairy. We're also a trusted propane provider, serving homes, farms, and businesses across northwestern Wisconsin and east central Minnesota. Whether you need a tank installed or reliable delivery, we're here for you 365 days a year with flexible options that fit your needs. As a farmer-owned cooperative, we're committed to supporting our community because your home and farm deserve the best. Call 715-689-1032 to learn more. Burnett Dairy Propane, serving you with pride every day of the year.
A&W Restaurant Pine City is still making fresh root beer, that signature item since 1919. It's still made fresh and on-site with real cane sugar and a blend of secret ingredients. It doesn't get any better than this. Their world-renowned A&W root beer is a classic treat, and they can top it off with creamy vanilla soft serve to be known as the famous A&W root beer float. Now that's smooth, tasty, and refreshing. An American iconic A&W root beer float. It never tasted so good. A&W Restaurant Pine City. Come grab your root beer float today.
A Lennox air source heat pump is a high-efficiency air conditioning unit that can also heat your home or business during the spring and fall. It's more economical than heating with propane. Have Dale's Heating and Appliance install your Lennox air source heat pump. Ask Dale's how you can receive up to $1,000 in rebates for your air source heat pump system. And ductless mini splits also qualify for up to $1,000. Visit dalesheatingandappliance.com. Conditions apply. See dealer for details.
Pine Insurance Agency and Grinnell Mutual are dedicated to expressing our gratitude this Thanksgiving and every day. We're thankful for your trust in us. We hope you enjoy a memorable holiday with the ones you love. Thanks for continuing to trust in tomorrow. Contact Pine Insurance Agency, your local Grinnell Mutual agent at pineagency.us for all your insurance needs. Trust in Tomorrow is a registered trademark of Grinnell Mutual Reassurance Company.
Back here on both WCMP and KBEK for this fall sports recap here. Ethan Game Day Gilman joined by Andy Beckstrom and Adam Hefty. And guys, we're moving on. We talked about our volleyball awards, our football awards, and now we're just going to kind of some random ones, but best game experience this far. And what I mean by that is just the overall, the atmosphere, the game itself, the fans, the cheers. Maybe it's a student section even that got into it that was like, that made you say, wow, this is a lot of fun. But what was your best game experience this fall, whether it be volleyball or football?
I could take this either the macro or the micro. The macro would be maybe when we were doing Rush City at Bram volleyball. I spoke to you before we got on the air like this. There's juice here. Yeah. This feels different. So that's kind of a macro. It turned out that Rush City won, but Bram really competed there. In the micro, you touched on it earlier. It was a state tournament against Annandale when Abby Thielander went back to serve. When you do broadcasting, as long as we have been doing it, there are certain points of lore that you bring through. Andy and I talk a lot about Whitney Olson from Cambridge Isani basketball. This was 10 years ago, about how
might have been longer than that.
No time on the clock. She gets fouled, tie ball game. She hit down, or no, it wasn't tied. They were down two. Yeah. She hits both free throws, brings it to overtime in the section championship. But this, I think, is almost on par with that state tournament. That your season's on the line. You're down. It was either 3 or 4 that Rush City was down to Annandale, and Abby Thielander goes back to serve with a smile on her face. She is not bothered by this at all. Ice, water in her veins. And sure enough, they came back and tied it up and brought it to extras.
And I think that's something we talked a little bit about, Rush City, reloading and playing different, teams, and the hope that Rush City football might have been able to play one of those top teams in their section, but didn't get the opportunity. Rush City volleyball, they're throwing themselves into as much turmoil as they can. So that way, when they get to the state tournament, this is a big bath of a crucible. This isn't like, something that's tough. This is just, Thursday afternoon, here we go, no big deal. So I really like to be able to see, when teams do that, and, and it shows, when you get into those situations. I think that, to kind of touch on just an overall, to kind of stay very high level, to use Adam's word, macro, maybe. I think that the vibe in the Rush City Gymnasium for volleyball is just absolutely tremendous. It's mostly packed house. People are having fun. It's just a good atmosphere. The student section is really into everything, have a lot of fun. I think maybe removing, it from that just a little bit for myself personally, I think probably one of the best games that, that I had was probably the Mille Lacs Bram football game. It was late, like we're talking mid-October, so fall, but it was in the 70s.
Yeah.
So I was wearing just a t-shirt and I wasn't wearing shorts because I knew I was going to be at Annandale later on. So it was going to be cold. But, just a t-shirt. And, I spent where I was positioned, it was a small booth. And so the coaches were actually not in the booth with me. The coaches, one of them was on the landing right outside of the booth. The other one was actually with fans and the other side. So it was a little bit kind of it's a small town school, small type of situation. But there were times where when I was calling the game, I would just, the ball was on this side, I would just stand outside of the booth because I was put in the corner. It was just a beautiful day. It's hard. Just that type of experience for me personally it's hard to beat that. I mean, you get paid to be able to be out there in a beautiful day with great football in front of you and just a fun atmosphere, great vibe that they had going on there. A lot of, fans on both sides, just having a good time and just some really good football to be able to watch. So, I think on a personal note, probably that one, but, like a great atmosphere and rush and, it was really a lot of fun.
Yeah, there's a ton that we could choose from. I think Rush City is probably one of the ones that I would pick too. But again, to go away from that, I think I would go North Branch's homecoming game when they hosted Duluth-Denfeld. Again, not to go back to that one, but the atmosphere that it was. I mean, it was full. People had to. It wasn't like they chose to. People had to be on the fence standing. There was no sitting room half hour before kickoff. You had to go on the fence or in the grass or stand somewhere else to see the game. There were no seats left to watch that atmosphere and not just for North Branch either, for Denfeld and their fans too. Everyone was so into it. Plus, I got to see CJ Ham. He was there, so I got the celebrity appearance. So no, but no, he was there too to watch his alma mater. It was just a really cool atmosphere, and the way the game was played, a lot of hard hits. That running back for Duluth-Denfeld, just a talented back. Can't wait to see him at the next level. But that one would be for me probably one of the best game experiences. And again, just to see how Duluth-Denfeld was kind of favored going into that one, and see North Branch come out and I think, for a lot of people, wouldn't be pulling off an upset, but for Denfeld, they would definitely consider that. So that would be one of the cases for me. Again, the Rush City Annandale game at the state tournament, that's one that you just can't beat. There's so many more that we could talk about, but I think those would be the few that I would pick if I had to. Which takes us on to another one, is just what you guys kind of took away from this fall sports season in the grand scheme of things, kind of overall, whether it is maybe just, we had a lot more fans this year, or, hey, we had more views this year, just kind of what you took away from this fall sports season.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of them where it seems like we're finally fully back from where we took a dip from the COVID stuff. And it was really good to see. Saw a few really large crowds. But I think the overwhelming the overwhelming aura of this season was we had a lot of questions coming into this season from a lot of teams, and most of them answered it.
Yeah.
A lot of teams got better, whether it be from last year or even from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. A lot of teams got better and answered a lot of questions, and it was really good to see. We may not have had the top-tier teams. We did have a couple of those, but we didn't have anybody bad either. We had a lot of teams that were good.
I think that to kind of play off of that a little bit, I think the biggest thing that stood out for me, I probably would use the word resilience. There's a lot of teams that face some adversity, especially early in the year, that, like you mentioned, they didn't, what are we going to see? What kind of expectations do we really have for some of these teams? And some of them maybe faltered a little bit early in the season, but you didn't see a lot of teams. And I don't know, maybe I just haven't noticed it as much before, but I didn't feel like I seen as many players or teams, I don't want to say quit. Quit's not maybe the right word, but kind of like, okay, well, this game's done. Meh, whatever. We're over it now. Like we talked about with the Malacca versus, the couple of different games, whether it be Annandale or Princeton, or, we talk about some of the other teams, that would, teams that would, Hinckley against Rush City. You know what I mean? It's going to be a 3-0 win, likely going into it. That's what, us as an outsider, that's maybe what we see. But the kids didn't really see, there wasn't a lot of just, we're just a bad team, we're going to be a bad team, and that's fine. It seemed like there was a lot more resilience and a lot more confidence through the entire game, through the entire season, and wanting to, whether it be improve themselves or improve as a team, whatever it be. I think that, the word resilience, I guess, just comes to mind for me.
Those are two really good ones. I would say the younger athletes taking a bigger step and needing to and fully embracing that role and running with it. We've seen a lot throughout this season of what you guys mentioned, but we've seen a lot of younger athletes, the underclassmen, having to take these bigger roles out of necessity. And they really took that and ran with it in a good way. They learned a lot. They had some bumps and bruises along the way, but they really learned a lot. I think the other thing with me, for me, would be, maybe it's me personally, but maybe you guys experienced it too, but just the personal relationships that we've been able to build here in the sports with coaches, athletic directors, and even growing. We now, over the last couple of years, we've been able to get North Branch on a lot more broadcasts. Now we're getting out to Chisago Lakes now. We're getting out there covering their volleyball and football and now basketball this year. So for me, it was, again, maybe it's more personal, but just growing these relationships and how we are able to talk to these coaches, and they're so open with us. They're so willing to help us out and be like, well, here's what this is, or here, hey, he's close to this, or hey, here's what we're looking at for this game. So just the way that the support came in from the coaches too, the support that we get from the coaches, again, the ADs, how willing they are to help us and just be there for us. So that's one of the things that I would take. Again, maybe it's more personal, but I believe you guys have seen it too.
That's a really good point. I think for winter we should put AD of the season.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
right. That would be an impossible one to pick. Because we have a lot of really good ADs around the area, and it's really good. Like even when we get there to the gym or to the football field or the rink, they're always there to be helpful, and it's really, really good.
It is. For me, for my job's sake, I'm going to say all of them are the best. But that will lead us into a look at our winter sports season. But first, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear a word from our fine sponsors. We'll be back on the fall sports wrap-up here on WCMP and KBEK.
Whoa! They've got what you need at the Pine City Freeway Holiday Station Store. Right now, load up on deals like Peggy's Pizza, 2 for $16 with a new breakfast pizza available. Starbucks Frappuccinos are 2 for $7. Buy a fountain drink and get a Reese's King Size for only $2. And fill your propane tanks for $3.99 a gallon. Get ready for hunting and frying that turkey 24/7, 365. They've got what you need at the Freeway Holiday Station Store in Pine City.
Need reliable energy? Burnett Dairy Cooperative has you covered with top quality propane services. Whether you're heating your home, running your business, or firing up the grill, our propane is safe, efficient, and always dependable. Choose Burnett Dairy Cooperative Propane, your trusted partner for all things energy. Stay warm, stay powered, stay local.
Back here on the fall sports wrap-up here on both KBEK and WCMP. Ethan Game Day Gilman, joined again by Andy Beckstrom and Adam Hefty. And guys, we're turning our attention now towards the winter sports season. I think each of us has covered 2 games now. Winter sports is always tough because it's right up against fall sports. I mean, it is right there. We go fall sports, winter. It is now. But looking at this season, taking a look at the winter sports season, let's take a look. We've got teams to watch for on here, but taking a look at the season as a whole, what are you guys maybe hoping for is the right word instead of expecting, but some of the things that you're expecting too?
I think believe it or not, I think it's going to be a lot like the fall season. We're going to have a lot of teams that sort of underachieved last year. So I'm hoping to see some of those teams improve and kind of pull more of volleyball or an East Central volleyball and, get to that 500 mark and be competitive in those big games. So I think that's what I'm looking for and hoping for.
I think that I'd probably echo a lot of that sentiment that, we're looking to see kind of that next step from a handful of teams and see if they're going to be able to answer that proverbial bell. I think there's maybe even some of the better teams that are in our area that have graduated some solid players that looking to see like, okay, what step do they take from there? Because even sometimes, as much as you hate to lose like one of your best players, sometimes you end up taking a step forward because you can distribute more or whatever it may be. And it's not a knock against that player. It's just the way the team works. And I think it's going to be interesting to see, some of those teams, what step they're going to take. And I think we're going to have some pretty darn good teams. May see some lumps early, but I think that ultimately I'd have to agree with Adam that it might be kind of another one of those, we're seeing some improvement as we go along.
And I mean, we have those really good teams that we're expecting, the Bram girls or the East Central boys. But you were there for the Bram State tournament runs. And I think a big factor in why they were so good, not just in our area, but in the state as a whole, because the competition that they were playing in this area, was it the Rum River back then, or was it the Great River?
Still the Great River.
Okay,
yeah,
well,
Great River for Bram. Yeah,
but there were so many good teams, and they were tested every single game. And if you have those really good teams that we have already, they need that competition to take that next step. I think that's a big factor in that.
Yeah, and I would just go back off that, kind of seeing what teams can answer the questions that we all have. What are you going to be after you graduated so much? Maybe you've got a new coach this year. What is that new coach going to bring? So answering some questions, but also, again, seeing what teams that we talked about last year that were either close to the state tournament or made a nice section playoff run, can they come out and be the team that we expect them to be? We talk about the Bram girls. I think Ogilvie girls would be there too, because look how they played Bram. I think the depth might be a little bit of an issue for them, but looking at the Bram girls, the East Central boys, for hockey, I think even maybe the Pine City boys and girls, Cambridge Isani has to be in that conversation as well. I think going back to basketball, we can look at maybe Rush City this year taking a leap forward from last year, very inexperienced last year, taking a leap forward. What is the Pine City girls going to look like this year after graduating heavy the last 2 years, maybe graduating the best player they've had in that program, in Carly Jusak? Kind of what are these teams going to look like and going forward? And again, Andy mentioned it, taking those lumps maybe early on, but I think we'll see a lot of teams grow throughout the season as well. And that leads us right into teams to watch for. Who are those teams to watch for? I know, Adam, you had mentioned a couple, but I think there's more that we can talk about too. But Adam, we'll go with you. Who are some of those teams that we should be watching for?
Well, I think I'm going to go with the Bram girls. I've had them a couple times. They run a lot. Not only do they run a lot, but they have a lot of players that they work into the offense. When I have a score sheet in every game, and a lot of times you'll have 4 or 5 players scoring points on teams. Bram has 9. And it's Coach Zach Loy does a really good job of cycling in players, and that's how he's building the program that you can be good for 1 year, but can you be good for 5, 10, 15 years? I think that's what he's trying to do with getting a versatile team that can beat you from a lot of different angles and just run a lot.
I'd have to agree, kind of on the initial that I think what Coach Loy's doing there is, we've talked numerous times about, like you have some schools that will have a team that will have a coach that is there to coach, and they do what they can with what they have. And, sometimes it's a matter of, teachers are pulled in a million different directions. So I'm never going to speak ill towards that. But then sometimes you get the right person in the right spot at the right time that is there and going to be there for multiple years. And that's when you start seeing a program more than just a team. And I think that, what Coach Loy's been able to do, I think it's starting to be able to build that. For me, probably some of the teams that I'm going to look at is some of the teams that you had mentioned a little bit. I think that Cambridge Isani hockey is going to come back or not come back, but continue to be pretty solid. They're in a very tough section, but I think that they're going to try to be right there in the talk of things. But I'm really looking forward to seeing what the Pine City boys and girls are going to be able to do. The last 2 weeks, I've been able to see both of those squads. Pine City girls graduated for the first time since they've had this newer iteration of the Pine City squad in the last 4 years. It's the first time that they've graduated heavy. They've had 1 or 2, but they graduated.
Wasn't it like 10
8,
or something?
10 people, and a lot of critical pieces. They have a lot of critical pieces coming back, but you're losing a ton of experience And they started out, 4-0, 5-0 to start the year. And I think that they're playing some really good hockey. They're moving the puck well. They got a new coach that's got some different ideas. And I think it's going to it'd be interesting to see, how things, progress throughout the course of the year. I think that their netminder, Iris Samfer, is going to be, probably one of the keys to their success throughout the year, as with hockey, goaltenders typically tend to be. I think that that's going to be a one to really watch. I think that Pine City boys, it's going to be interesting to see how their depth works out. Their blue line is one of the most solid blue lines that I've seen in the area. All 4 defensemen that get the bulk of the playing time, absolutely tremendous, and they got some good experience with it. Aaron Rutke and net, I think, is going to be really, really good. Their forward line's not quite as deep. They're a little bit young there, but they have probably one of the best hockey prospects that I've seen in this region for a very long time in McCall Leisure.
Yeah.
This kid he's not the fastest out there, but he's quick and he can get by you, but he has some of the best hands that's out there. He's going to get out in front. He's going to score some goals that are going to be rebound shots that people would, you see when you watch hockey, they're just kind of jamming away at it. They're just throwing sticks at it. He's actually getting it, doing something with it before he lets it settle down. He's just so quick to the puck. The game the other night against Mora, he had I think they scored 10 goals, and I think he had 6 of them. And maybe one or two of them were, things that he created. The rest of it was the rest of the team kind of created. But then he'd roof one that was just, how do you even make that play at that age? He's a junior as well. So, he's still got another full year. But I think he's going to be, we'll see how the team does. But I think especially him, he's going to be definitely a player to be able to watch.
Oh, absolutely. I would agree with that. We've been hearing about him. I think last year he's younger, but it's like, got to watch out for him. So I would definitely agree. There are so many that we could talk about, both the Rush City basketball teams. I should say Rush City North Branch Girls Co-op, but the boys basketball team, the East Central boys, we're looking for them to get back this year. They have pretty much everybody coming back except for a few key pieces. Ben Carlin is going to be their big guy, and he's wreaking havoc.
He is a menace. He's hard to just defend.
And I can't wait to see how they use him now that Dixon is gone, because man, I think they had to put him in a role that maybe not necessarily he shouldn't have been in, but that wasn't best suited for him. And now I think they're going to get to put him in wherever he needs and or wants to be in. I can't wait to see what he does. One of the teams that I want to talk about is Pine City Boys. 2 years ago, they graduated really heavy. And last year, they took it as a building year, and they mentioned it multiple times. Matt Blake, the lone senior, they told him, you're going to have to take a back seat this year, and we're not going to be not necessarily competitive, but we're not going to be the team that we're used to being in years previous. So they told Blake, hey, you're just going to have to basically sit back and not waste the year. But, in hearing from Coach Kyle Allen, he said, this is not what we usually do, and Matt Blake has had to basically take one for the team this year. And I can't wait to see what last year did for them building for this year. They're going to have a big group of seniors again this year. I want to see, did last year, were they able to build on a lot of that, and will they be able to work it out on the court, or will we see them need to build a little bit more for the future? That'll be the one thing, and I can't wait to see how they do that, and kind of what they do behind their starters and their seniors is going to be the one thing too. And for Ogilvy, the girls, I want to see what they're going to do with maybe a little bit lack of depth.
Right.
We've seen how they did against Bram. I think that will wind up being those 3 teams, Bram, Ogilvy, and unfortunately Crosby Ironton, will be the 3 teams at the top of this conference this year. No doubt in my mind, for girls anyways. And speaking of the conference, it looks a lot different now with Crosby and Aiken and along with Mora. But I think those are the 3 teams who are battling for the top spot in the conference. And I think there's a chance Bram could wind up upsetting Crosby Ironton. There is a chance, just because Bram's returning a lot and they are headed in the right direction. So I think those are the teams that I'm looking at. And to mention another one is the Mora boys. Another team who graduated heavy a couple of years ago. They were a little bit inexperienced last year. We saw some of the talent come out, but just that inexperience was there, and they weren't really able to shuffle things around the way they needed it to be. They returned a good chunk of last year, and maybe their best 3-point shooter they've had, and one of their bigger guys who can do it both in the paint and outside the arc. So I want to see what that team is able to do this year too, with returning a lot of the guys they had last year and finally able to have that experience as a team as a whole. They shuffled a lot the last couple of seasons. I want to see what they're able to do with basically a majority of the returning 5 this year.
Yeah, I had Bram and Ogilvy girls last night, and Cadence Pierce is incredible.
Ridiculous.
Maybe one of the best players in the conference. She basically held Ogilvy in that game almost by herself, and she did a great job there. But I want to touch on this point before we get too far, because you touched on it a little bit. This might be a little controversial, but how great is it that Mora is in the right conference now?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, Mora should be playing teams or being in the same conference as Pine City, Bram, Hinckley, Finlayson. They should be in the conference.
Yeah.
You know, the Rum River should come back.
I wish. Yeah.
If only it were that easy.
Yeah, right. No, I do. That is a good point.
Yeah.
Though.
Yeah, I mean, that was hyperbole. Hyperbole because Cambridge Isani, Chisago Lakes.
Right,
I mean, Bram's not playing them.
No.
But, I mean, Mora, for sure. Mora out of the Granite Ridge this season and kind of where they belong.
I think everyone would mostly agree with that. Absolutely.
I think that's probably one of the things I'm probably almost looking for the winter season as well. You know, we talked a little bit about that earlier, but just the dynamic of, like you mentioned, having an Aiken and Crosby and some of those schools in that. They've been kind of non-conference here and there, but to like, okay, now this is kind of your path through.
Yep.
And now you have to kind of go through them teams. You're going to see them a couple of times. You can't just, like, okay, well, maybe we don't schedule them or anything like that. Like, that's your path forward, and it adds a little bit of depth, a little bit of competition to it.
It really does.
I really like the way that the Great River is mix mashed with AA and single A, and the single A is competitive with the AA side, and it's a really good mixture of the two classes.
It really is. That's what's fun about it is football wise you don't see it because it's district, which we won't even get into that, but I mean, for most of the sports, it's such a fun conference to be a part of, and you could see a team who might not be having the year they'd expect. They come in and all of a sudden they're winning a game, and it's like, what is going on here? So that's what I love about this conference. Now you got those 3 new teams, and it feels like they belong, and I think there's even talks of trying to grow this conference even more. So maybe in the next few years we'll see it grow with some other teams as well. But that'll shift us into our last couple of topics that we'll talk about. We'll come back and talk about those after a word from our fine sponsors here on both KBEK and WCMP.
Hey there, sports fans. Brad here from Lee's Pro Shop in Pine City, and we have a Lee's Crazy Sale going on. It's time to gear up for hockey, basketball, wrestling, or volleyball equipment, as it is all 20% off. That's right, 20% off all your favorite hockey, basketball, wrestling, and volleyball equipment. Whether you're a beginner or a pro, Lee's Pro Shop has everything you need to take your game to the next level. So don't wait. Stop by Lee's Pro Shop today. Save big on your favorite sports equipment. Hurry in for Lee's Crazy Sale. Lee's Pro Shop, where the passion for sports begins.
If aches and pains are holding you back, Wellia Health is here to assist you. Our sports medicine team is dedicated to getting you back to your passions. With extensive experience and expertise, we specialize in managing concussions, a worry for both young athletes and adults. Whatever the injury, let's get you back in action with an appointment at Wellia Health. Call us today at 320-679-1313 or conveniently schedule through your MyChart account. Visit welliahealth.org for more information.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs? Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs? You kidding me? Playoffs?
Whoa, they've got what you need at the Pine City Freeway Holiday.
We're going to talk about playoffs, and it may be early to talk about playoffs, but I talked about it in the fall sports season. It's going to be here before you know it, and sadly, 'tis the case with winter sports. But I want to take a look for you guys. I want us to predict some of these playoff teams. Maybe who will just have the deepest run, or who is even going to get maybe even to state, who's going to shock some teams in the section playoffs. So for you guys, let's predict some of these playoff teams. Let's start it off with who's the team that's going to get to state, if there is going to be any.
I think Bram girls. I think the path is the best for them.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to agree with that one. I think that's probably the first pick around our local area. That if I have to say that a team's going to get to state, that'd be who I'd give the nod to.
Well, it's going to be unanimous because that's definitely who I'm going to pick too.
Well, let me ask you with our resident hockey voice. I'm not sure if you do some hockey, but
Very little.
Okay. We've had a little bit of a drought with hockey going to the state tournament. We had North Branch going a couple of years ago, but do you see a path for any of them to make that run?
I think it's a potential. Pine City had a little bit of a chance last year. It kind of faltered a little bit in the postseason. I think that the Pine City boys this year, I think that they're a little bit more stout on the blue line. I think that Rookie's solid in net. I think Grabavo was tremendous in net, but I think that Rookie is going to keep that going. I think that the question mark is going to be kind of that forward line, like we had talked about before. If they can make sure that they get two solid lines that can really be a threat, I think that they got a chance to really make a deep run. Their section has changed a little bit over the course of the last handful of years, and so it's a little bit more wide open. I think that they have an opportunity to be able to make a run. It could be kind of a dark horse, state tournament type of team.
Speaking of dark horses, I would even go with Cambridge Isani, both the boys and girls, Northern Tier or Cambridge Isani boys, and even the Pine City girls. I think really those four teams all each have a chance, and maybe they're looked at as more of a dark horse. I honestly think each four of them could make the state tournament. Cambridge Isani, I think for them it's going to be a little bit tougher. They're in a really tough section. Their section opponents are out of this world. That section is stacked, as is the conference too, but I think they would, if they can get back to Cambridge Isani hockey that we're used to seeing, they have another chance. Northern Tier, the girls, they played some really tough teams to begin the season, but they beat Pine City, who started off, like you mentioned, 5-6-0, and 4-2 they beat them. So I think Northern Tier has a chance to continue to grow and get better. And the Pine City girls, same thing. They might be a really dark horse in that race, but I think they if there's a team that would go out and shock people, but people wouldn't be too shocked, I think it'd be the Pine City girls.
And the Pine City girls last year kind of took that step from being kind of a little bit below 500, around 500 to above 500, and they really kind of took a really nice step last year. I think that the concern for them as far as a state tournament run, I think that a deep playoff run could be viable. It's just all about that section.
Yeah.
A handful of years ago, they had a tremendous year, and they ended up facing Orono in the first round of the playoffs. It's like, come on now, like, what are you trying to do? I mean, like, it's just not even, fair, just even size-wise. And so I think trying to see them hopefully be able to take that next step, I think that'd be tremendous to be able to see. I think it's just sometimes the section pairings just aren't kind to you, to you at all. You might be better than a lot of the other teams, but whatever that pairing ends up being, I think sometimes ends up being the Achilles heel, if you will, or as Adam likes to say, the bugaboo. The bugaboo.
I like that one. I like that one.
But yeah, I think I would agree. I think that they'd be a really nice dark horse contender.
And shifting our focus back to basketball, I think Bram is the consensus pick. I think if you ask a lot of people around this area, they'd say Bram girls. I think another dark horse for the girls might just be the North Branch Rush City Co-op. They return basically everybody from last year's team. They still have the one player from Rush City, but they just beat Two Rivers. They were a top 10 ranked team in the preseason polls. For you to go out and beat a top 10 team, now again, you're ranked top 10. That doesn't mean anything on your final record. That doesn't mean anything on your playoff run at the end of the year. It's pretty good, though, determination of how good that team's going to be. Because we look at Crosby Ironton the last, 3-4 years, they've been a top 10 team. Well, they've been in the state tournament or in the section championship. So for Two Rivers to be there as a top 10 team and for North Branch to beat them, they had them last year, and they almost beat them. To come back and beat them this year, I think is a good sign for that team. They're turning the corner in the right direction. I've got a good relationship with Joe Lattimore. I think we all know him, and just the way he's talked about the girls and their relationship. And last year was a little bit interesting. You had girls from Rush City on that team, and the dynamic changed a little bit. So there was those relationships that weren't built. Now they are this year. Now they're used to it. Now they know the head coach. They know what he expects. So I think this year they might be another one of those kind of dark horse teams to make the state tournament. It's going to be tough because of their section. Becker's there. Well, it's going to be hard to get by. But if there's a team to do it, I think they might be the ones. If there's another one, Ogilvy. Yep. Just because they've got the talent. Again, what we'll talk about at the end of the year too is the depth.
Right.
Injury wise, are they going to stay healthy, and what does that depth look like, and how can they grow? But Cadence Pierce is a one young lady wrecking crew.
I mean, she just takes over. I had her last night, and she just takes over. When she spots up for three, you just assume it's going to go in because it's the right choice. They lost to Bram by 6. Bram was pulling away, but Cadence Pierce just took over, and she was a problem. Going back to the North Branch Rush City girls, Coleman is a really good guard as well. We have a lot of good guard play in this area, boys and girls. Coleman, do everything guard for North Branch. Isabella Folkema from Rush City, also very talented girl on that squad in the post. So yeah, they have a good mixture of players that really make North Branch a weapon.
I think one other team that I want to kind of mention a little bit, and I think especially you, Adam, I think you probably like the way that I'm going to go with this one here, is kind of a little bit off the board, a little bit more kind of under the radar, is going to be Hinckley Finlayson boys. Do I have a specific player in mind? Not necessarily, but it seems like whatever Coach Dan Kraft is doing up there, every single year they go into the postseason, they're around 500, and they kind of go old Tom Izzo, Michigan State on the bit, and they start upsetting teams, and it clicks all at the right time. That they could go in sub 500, and they'd still be kind of like, okay, well, let's lightly pencil them in for maybe section championship, around there, because something happens and something works, and whatever it is, I mean, all the credit to Coach Kraft, but you get people to buy in at the right time. Who knows? I mean, it could end up turning out to nothing, but I've seen it numerous times where something clicks at the right time.
Yeah, they'll win when they shouldn't.
Yeah, and that's a really good pick though, because I remember looking the last 2 years, and I'm like, okay, they didn't have the season they would hope. They've got a decent section to get through. Then they go in, win 1-2 games. I'm like, wait a minute, now all of a sudden they're a team to watch out for. These other teams may not have expected. So I think that's a really good pick in my opinion. And leaning towards boys, Adam, I think you and I would both say East Central, no doubt, because the people that they're returning, their coach Fote, he's done a great job with that program, and they would definitely be my pick. They'll have to get through 1 or 2 teams here in the postseason, but there's no reason I don't see them being back at the section championship.
Well, Ben Carlin, their offense might be a little more open up for him. With Jamie Dixon, he was more of the post player. I don't know if Ben Carlin can go out to the 3-point line, but he certainly can go to the mid-range.
Yeah.
He can open it up a little bit, open it up for the guards to penetrate down into the lane as well. And Carlin is absolutely a menace down low as well. But he has that ability to, as a 5, open up the offense and spread it out a little bit.
And we've seen that with Xavier Letexier, hitting those threes in those couple games that we called. He can hit it from deep. Now, the problem was him being a little bit more consistent. I think we seen I think it was the semifinal game where they were shooting well below 30% from the field. And it was like, oh boy, we're looking at an upset here for East Central anyways. And it was like, what's going to happen? And all of a sudden, the second half, we started seeing the shooting percentage go up for those guys. And Letexier was a part of that, hitting some of those big threes. So I think Letexier is going to be one of those key guys too, because I think last year he was only a sophomore. He'll come back as a junior. Him and Carlin, I think, are going to be the key guys. But we can't go without mentioning the other guys surrounding them too. It is a team game. You have 5 out on the court. So it is going to come down to all 5 of them meshing as one. And I think East Central would be, I think, my pick for a state. But Hinckley Finlayson, I like that as a dark horse pick, because there's something about the postseason. Whatever it is, it's in the water, and they run with it.
I would go with Mora based on their talent and their ability to spread the basketball, but their section is just so darn hard.
Yeah, it's always Albany. And I hate it because it's always Albany.
It's Melrose, Cathedral.
Sauk Center,
it's just
Annandale.
It's ridiculous.
We had the East Central section championship game over in Hollenbeck Hall in St. Cloud, and the game before that was the 6AA championship, and it was packed in Hollenbeck. They packed a college stadium.
There was not an open seat.
It was loud. It was so fun. It was so fun.
It was cool.
But yeah, it's really good basketball in that section.
Mora, though, is a good choice. I'd say Princeton boys, too. Princeton, they've been there quite often. They were there only a couple of years ago. If I had to pick another one, I think they would be it. So, well, guys, that is going to do it here for our fall season sports wrap-up. Is there anything else that you guys wanted to add or have anything else more to talk about?
No, this was great. We're glad you set this up. At least for me. I don't want to speak for Andy, but
don't speak for me.
Yeah, how dare you? No, this is great. We've been wanting to do this for a while, and something like this, and it's good that it was put together in a good way to get or finish the fall season, and hopefully we're able to do it for the winter season.
And I think I'd echo the same thing that Adam said, that it's been great to be able to do this and be able to highlight some of the players and some of the teams that kind of deserve that. But we never want to take away from some of the teams that maybe we didn't mention. But we did, I think, try to go down the list with a lot of the different teams that we have in our local area, and it's a gauntlet out there sometimes. And I think that, this year has been, kind of a really fun year to be able to see, the teams improve as we go. And, I think it's just fun to be a part of it. And, it's good we can recap during games or after games, whatever it is, or even in our little text thread. But, to be able to have this kind of, opportunity to be able to, bring all of that to everybody out there as well, I think is kind of a fun little deal.
And you get to see our pretty faces.
Yeah, well, his.
Well, yeah, there was a lot of unexpecteds this fall sports season. I appreciate you guys putting up with me and doing this with me. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys for taking time.
Thank you, Ethan.
Well, thank you guys. You guys, it's a team, and I appreciate you guys working with me. It's been great working with you guys, and appreciate you guys coming out here tonight. I know we've got a little one who's hungry, so we'll get you on your way. But I thank you again, guys, for coming out here tonight, and I hope you have a great Thanksgiving weekend.
You as well.
You as well.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. Again, that is the fall sports wrap up here on both WCMP and KBEK. We'll get you back to regularly scheduled programming on both of those stations. But thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your night and a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend.